This is the final week of our message series, Game Changer. Over the past 4 weeks, we have explored Jesus' authority. The way he exercises and delegates his power is a game changer. He has infinite power and glory as the Lord of Lords, and yet he never lords that power over us. Instead, he invites us to share in that authority as his children and his followers. So what does that really mean for us? What exactly does it mean to have Jesus' authority? And how do we live that out? In today's gospel, Jesus gets very real with us about what it means to be his follower. And we realize that that's no easy task. With great power comes great responsibility. Check it out. If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Jesus isn't exactly making it easy for us to be his follower, is he? I mean, he gives us this great share in his power to spread the truth and to conquer evil in our hearts and in the world. And yet, when he tells us what is necessary to be his follower, it's not the image of a conquering warrior that draws to mind. Instead, it is the image of a person humbly suffering and following in his footsteps. Cradle Catholics are almost numb to this idea, aren't we? I think many of us can probably recite this verse in our sleep. We've heard it so much growing up. So we're going to look at this verse in depth to see how crucial it is and what it really means for you and me as Christ followers. To first get some context on this, let's back up a few verses and see how Jesus was slowly introducing to his disciples the idea of his crucifixion. You see, he was being considerate, trying to warm them up for what was coming. We read, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord. This must never happen to you. Of the apostles, Peter is one of the ones that is closest to Jesus and one of the boldest. And so when he catches on to what Jesus is implying, he feels like he's got to do something about it. He's hoping to change Jesus' mind. He doesn't want him to go through pain and suffering, which makes sense, right? I mean, think of your own loved ones, your children, and your spouse. Wouldn't you do anything to keep them from suffering? I think most of us would. Peter truly cares for Jesus. So to see Jesus' response to him is almost shocking. We read this. But Jesus turned and said to him, Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Ouch. Of everything Peter expected Jesus to do, calling him Satan and a stumbling block was probably pretty low on the list. But the last line of this verse gives us a clue as to why Jesus has such a strong reaction. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. You see, Peter was hoping that Jesus would change his plan or use all of that power that Peter had seen glimpses of to protect himself. But Jesus is teaching a very powerful lesson here, that even though Christ has all this power, he isn't going to use it to change God's plan. Even though it seems crazy on a human level that Jesus wouldn't try to prevent harm from coming his way, he's got a bigger focus. His mind is on divine things. And then he says the line that we've talked about before. If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. What a contrast to the Pharisees and scribes of Jesus' day. What a contrast to the me, myself, and I culture that we live into today. That's why, friends, it is not easy to be a disciple of Jesus. Because Jesus has bluntly said, listen, if you want to follow me, it's not going to be a bed of roses for you. It's going to be a crown of thorns. This is the ultimate juxtaposition. A crown, normally a symbol of power and dominance, placed upon the head of the ultimate king for the purpose of mockery, humiliation, and pain. And I think that it's not so crazy for us to look at the cross and say, where did all his power go? Where did all his glory go? Friends, it's exactly on the cross where we see his power the most. He conquered death by dying. He broke the chains of sin that had humanity locked out of heaven. He shed every last drop of his own blood in the most painful, the most savage, the most humiliating method of death known to man, just to give us a chance to get to know him. The cross, my friends, this cross is no sign of defeat. We hang a cross at the front of our churches, not to make ourselves sad or to remind us of how terrible we are. Not at all. We hang this cross here so that everyone who walks through these doors can know that we have a God who came and laid it all down, laid his power down so that we could have a shot at being with him in heaven. There is power in laying ourselves down, my friends. There is power, great power, in humility. That's why it is so empowering for Jesus to tell us that we need to take up our cross and follow him. He says we need to take up our own share in the greatest victory that has ever happened in order to follow him. It is from the cross that we are meant to share in his power. Now check out what St. Paul has to say about this in his letter to the Colossians. I am now rejoicing in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am completing what is lacking, Christ's affliction, for the sake of his body, that is, the church. Now, I don't know about you, but I tend to take more of a Peter approach to pain. I try to avoid it as much as possible. I don't even like getting a paper cut. I cry like a little baby when I get a paper cut. Or if I stub my toe, I complain to my staff all the time. Like, I hate pain. Anybody like pain? Okay, right? I hate it. I ask God to change his plans. I complain about it. I squirm. None of this crazy rejoicing in my sufferings business like St. Paul. It seems like St. Paul is doing a better job of carrying his cross than I am. Really. It truly is above what we as humans can do. It takes a whole lot of grace to be able to accept suffering and trust God. It takes a whole lot of grace and a whole lot of trust to accept suffering. It's not easy. But we see that it is actually a sharing in Christ's suffering. Not because Jesus didn't already suffer enough for us or something like that, but because it is a share in his power. And his power is infinite love for you and me, for each one of us. And that powerful love led him to die on a cross for us. So if Christ, who is infinitely powerful, was willing to humbly lay aside all of his power for us, how much more should we be willing to give? How much more should we lay aside comfort and false glory in order to honor him? How much more should we be willing to give to him, considering he gave it all up for us? My brothers and my sisters, you will find true power when you lay your power down and take on the symbol of our greatest victory. This is not a symbol of defeat. It is a symbol of victory. It is a symbol of hope. It is a symbol of second chances. We will find victory when we take up our cross. For truly, we have an awesome God. Brothers and sisters, our God, he's changed the game. And he's given us hope. May God bless you all.